thanks for stopping by. I'm glad you're here. Why not relax and listen to a story or two? It's our little vagabond story, from our first RV renovation to getting legal to actually getting to travel a little bit. We've been renovating the wheelie house, kind of working back to front of the RV. The bedroom and bathroom are at the very back of the RV. And so that's where we started. We're just waiting for the flooring to get done to have it completely completed. But today I thought I would take a look at the bedroom. The bedroom came with a bunk bed, and it was held in by some actually fairly clever engineering by Jayco. When we first looked at the bunk, we weren't completely sure why it should be there. Lynn, our previous owner, decided to add some large dowels to the bunk just to make sure that the clever engineering worked. Even with these improvements, it was easy enough to get the bunk out of the wheelie house and into the dumpster. As easy as it was to get the bunk out, this thing called a shirt wardrobe was a real problem child. This shirt wardrobe was part of the structure that held the bunk in place, and it included 120 and 12 volt power hidden in two false sides and a false bottom. Getting this thing out took way more time than it ever should have. Now, let's see here. The bunk was easy. The shirt wardrobe was hard. There must be some kind of rule about conservation of pain involved in this. Anyway, the next thing I did was try to remove the old dingy wallpaper. This wallpaper covers the entire house. It's not really paper. It's some kind of like vinyl stuff, I think. Plastic-like. The stuff is really, really stuck to the plywood substrate. It was really hard to get it off. I found that if you use plenty of acetone, that would soften the glue between this between the substrate plywood and the wallpaper, and you could kind of pull it off. However, in order to put enough acetone in to get that glue soft would probably make the wheelie house into a toxic waste dump. So I tried another approach, a heat gun. That kind of worked, sorta. Every time I pulled off some of the wallpaper, it seems like I would get some of the first ply of the plywood. The more I pulled off, the more of that first ply came off with the paper. Well, I decided enough of that. What I'm going to do is just get some of that really, really expensive primer and just prime things over, and I think that'll be good enough. Actually, the approach seems to work. The wallpaper has a little pattern in it, and of course that pattern comes through when I paint it, and that pattern makes it kind of fun. Now, if you've read Aesop's fables, you might be thinking about the story of the fox and the grapes. Well, I like to think of this as making out the best from a bad situation. At some point, water will get everywhere in a camper. The platform for the bed was made of untreated wood sticks and plywood. it's kind of actually sort of interesting. It was a piece of 3/4 inch plywood, and then another, I guess maybe a 3/8 inch plywood stapled, I think, and glued to the 3/4 inch ply, making it just a little bit bigger than bigger than an inch thick. And this piece of plywood, underneath it is the RV garage. Somebody decided to put a big hinge so you could open up this piece of plywood and look down into the garage. And they did it on the far side, making lifting that door as hard as possible. So I took the door platform top off, painted it all up, and when I put it back in, I put it on the side, the hinge on the side instead of on the back, making it a little easier to open up that door. Since everything was made with just raw wood, sticks, and plywood, I went ahead and painted everything up. Hopefully, when rain or wind or some kind of water does get in there, it'll be a little bit more protected. With the bunk gone, there was room for more storage. So, two new cabinets were needed. I just used the same panel and frame construction. And then I took everything and put it on the kitchen table in our apartment. I mean, after all, it is wintertime. Wendy did say that it was okay. That's when I got one of those great ideas. I decided to put lights inside the cabinet. That'll make it easy to use, right? You can find stuff. You just open up the door, the lights turn on, and you can see what's going on. Plus, I had a bunch of this LED strip lighting that we didn't really have a use for. So it's kind of like recycling in a way. It all seemed like a great idea. And it actually sort of does work. I tried several different approaches to latch the doors on this cabinet. One thing I tried was, these new rare earth magnets, but it really didn't work out very well. I finally ended up with ball and clasp latches. They're pretty easy to find online, and they work really well. You can adjust them. They don't cost that much. So that's what I did. Now, if you've been watching all of these stories, you might imagine that I have little idea what I'm doing. Well, I might agree with that, at least to a certain extent. Anyhow, I did get this cabinet installed. The lights actually work. Both the lights inside the cabinet and reading lights underneath the cabinet. And Wendy does really store stuff up there, and it is pretty easy to see what's there. There's also in the sort of the bedroom area a little shelving unit. Well, with the bunk gone, there was room to make that little shelving unit a little bit bigger. So I did just that. I got some leftover yellow pine lumber, cut it up on my dad's table saw, and tacked it together. Behind the shelving unit is just raw plywood. Of course, then further back is the bathroom. So I took a piece of this yellow pine over to the paint store and talked to the clerk there and asked her if she couldn't match it. Actually, she did pretty well. When after I painted it up and put the shelving unit in, that plywood in the back just sort of vanishes away, which is sort of like what it should do. So, even though I don't know what I'm doing, sometimes things seem to work out. Along the side of the bed is a tiny little crawl space kind of through the middle of the wheelie house. In there is almost all of the plumbing and wiring that's used in the whole camper. So I opened up this area, cleaned out all the mouse poopies. There seems to be mouse poopies everywhere. And then I checked the breaker box to make sure all the wires, were cinched down in nice and tight. Then I opened up some of the fresh water that goes to the tub and put in emergency cutoff valves. That all seemed to work out pretty well. I also installed a new battery charger. This is a battery charger that's designed to be able to use lithium-ion batteries as well as regular acid batteries. I also put in a smallish inverter to take 12 volts and make it 120 volts. Wendy and I planned to do a lot of dry camping or boondocking or whatever term I should be using here. We just didn't think we'd use 112 volt house electricity very much at all. And we made other goofs too. One was not checking the transfer switch. More on that in another story. Well, there was a bunch of spackling and priming and painting and sealing, and then the bedroom was more or less renovated. Sealing? Well, yes, Wendy pointed out that the walls needed to be easy to clean. It turns out that a quick coating of this polyacrylic works really well, makes cleaning easy, and it doesn't leave much of a sheen. It's kind of hard to see. So I guess that turns the cleaning job into an easy one. And speaking of Wendy, she ordered something called a couch bed. But that's another story.